Wow, thank you. Thank you. Wow, what a cool thing. I've never actually spoken to a large creative community before. So what a great opportunity. Thank you, Mark, and the organizers, of course, for having me. This is such a cool thing. I've known about Creative Mornings for a long time. I actually showed up one time. I was supposed to come and do the 3-minute pitch with one of my stereos to kind of, they call it like the hot minute or something, where you get to explain what you do. And so he's like, you got to show up at 8:30, and I'm like, okay, no problem. So I Google where his office is, and I thought that's where this was. And so I showed up in East Van at 8:45 with my rocket log, and knocking on the door to his office where there's supposed to be the thing. And he's like, no, dude, we're at SFU right by. And I lived two blocks down. And I went all the way across town and showed up to do this pitch, and it was right here. So I was supposed to be at Creative Mornings the first time. I would have put my hand up, but I couldn't because I didn't actually make it. But here we are. So again, thank you guys so much for having me. And we're going to start with a quick video.
I'm ready.
How you feeling, mate?
Number 15, Stars and Stripes, baby. He's ready.
What if you found a Rocky who played soccer?
I knew the biggest barrier to entry with Jay would be being American. So I know what our mentality is like in this country.
Percentage of lads that we take in to actually make it in the Premiership is probably less than 1%.
We thought Jay was crazy going to England.
Number 5, the big scorer, Jay DeMerit, a forward.
What if an unheralded American tried to fight his way into big-time English football?
When I first came to Europe, I think I had about $1,800.
He was so raw, he was very, very green.
And I used to pretend like these were players. So I used to kind of take the ball and I would and then I'd kick around it.
It was funny because Jay was subbed the second division Sunday league.
I knew that he was struggling because he came back after the first year with no money to his name.
What if determination could overpower expectation?
Everyone was talking about a couple of forwards we had, and I said, who's a centre-half?
We couldn't believe what we were seeing.
It is a match worth millions of pounds for a place in the Premiership.
He said to me, take as many pictures as you can, because I might never be here again.
What if he stood one step away from the promised land?
Two great words. What if I told you that in 2011, that story and that trailer produced a Kickstarter campaign, and in 70 days, the passionate soccer community raised $223,000 on Kickstarter to turn Rise and Shine into a documentary film. It was a very empowering moment for me. To have people that I don't know donating thousands of their hard-earned dollars to turn this story into a documentary film. So in a way, that was an empowerment moment for me to take onus and say, this story is much bigger than soccer. This story is much bigger than me. This is a story about life and about perseverance, belief, creativity, et cetera, et cetera. So I really take it upon myself to go out and share my story. So again, I'm happy to stand here today and share some of my story with you. But this is a creative morning. And what if I told you that before this soccer stuff had ever happened, I was a 4.5-year design student at the University of Illinois Chicago. And I earned, before I started my journey as a soccer player, I earned a bachelor's degree in industrial design. So I'm not just here talking about sports. I am here to talk about, in my experience, in living in both of those worlds, understanding both of those worlds, and today kind of drawing a parallel between what product design is, or what industrial design is, and I suppose how that was a major effect on my journey. And people ask me all the time, it's, my mom especially, when I spent 4.5 years and a lot of their money to get my degree, And unfortunately, playing soccer at that time, I thought maybe I would make it to the Whitecaps or get an MLS tryout. And unfortunately, I finished my college career at a Division I level, but I got passed up on the draft. So no one picked me, and the world was telling me that I wasn't good enough at soccer to play. So I should go and be a designer. But at the end of that day, I was like, I'm not ready to do that. I'm not ready to understand that. Maybe it was the creative process to look at problems and understand that there's a lot of ways to solve them, because that was built into me. But I mean, ultimately, Product Design 101, Project Me, was kind of where my mentality went. Right after I finished school, it was, I can go be a designer, but I think I'm going to do this. And essentially what happened was I kind of took that creative process, which I spent so much time of my education learning, and kind of turned myself into a product design project. So this is kind of where I'm trying to draw parallels today of Product Design 101 is technically, when you break it all down, it's either taking a product that exists, from bike racks to cars to furniture to whatever it is that you think, and having a already existing product and making it better. It's evolving it, changing the wheel a little bit. Maybe this pedal works more if I turn it this way. So there's always an improvement factor. But then there's also about doing something that doesn't exist. Trying to create a concept of something, creating a theory on that, and then now developing a product to prove your concept right. And that was kind of where I looked at myself. I always thought of myself as, what social need am I following? What is my concept? And my concept was, I've played college soccer for 3.5 years. I'm from a place called Green Bay, Wisconsin, which isn't exactly the soccer mecca of the world. And many of you guys know it's the other football that they're very famous for in Green Bay. So I came from a background where I didn't really have academy programs and big teams that I could play for. So in my mind, knowing myself, I was like, okay, well, this is I've had 3.5 years of soccer experience. I know the world is telling me I'm supposed to do something else. I know scouts didn't pick me. But my theory is that if I continue that same path for the next 3.5 years, I think I can be pro. So theory concept was, I need to do this, but I'm a prototype. I only have three years really of high-end soccer experience. America, or North America, has turned its back on me, but yet what I'm about to do, and this is the craziest part of my story, is that my last year in Chicago I played with an Englishman, and he was moving back to live with his mom in London. And my theory was that either way, if I have to start on the first step in any country, I might as well do it in the biggest soccer jungle in the world. So this is basically what I was up against. So this is the professional soccer leagues in England. The top 4 blocks, those are considered the professional leagues. So there's 96 professional teams in about the size of one U.S. state. The top league is the Premier League, and then there's the second, third, and fourth, and basically they play a relegation promotion system. So the top 3 teams every year at the end of the season go up a league, the bottom 3 teams in every league go down a league. So I started, when I landed on the English shores as a 23-year-old undrafted American, about right here. So that's in about the 12th division. There was about 480 teams ahead of me. So as a product, as a prototype, I knew that I had a lot of work to do. But I also knew that I could get creative. I knew what the creative process was, but I knew I had to get creative in order to do it. So what did I start doing? I played in 2 leagues. I played in the Sunday league, where you have to bring your own nets, and you have to drink Guinness after practice. That's a prerequisite. And number 2, I played in the 12th division. So I was making 40 pounds a game. That's about 60 bucks Canadian, or actually no, it's about 30 bucks Canadian. I'd get it in a little envelope. And that was my week's wage. I was living in Kieran's mother's house with 4 of his family members in a 3-bedroom house, and I crawled through a hole in the ceiling, and Kieran and I laminated that Home Depot cheap laminate the floor, and we rolled up a couple mattresses, threw them through the hole, and we slept on mattresses on the floor. And that was my digs for the first year. I was making, again, going back to my mom, she was really proud that I didn't use my design degree, and I was making 30 pounds a game, living in somebody else's attic in a country that didn't really respect that kind of educational system. But I knew I had to get creative, so I played as much as I could. I would go for runs because I knew I had to stay fit. I would play in pickup leagues because I knew I had to do things right. I started to ask questions, just like you're supposed to do in a prototype phase. What's up with this situation? Go and ask pros, seek mentorship. I now was in the biggest soccer jungle in the world, so I knew there was a lot of people that had knowledge about the sport. So I started asking questions. Hey, you just watched me play. You used to play pro. If I'm going to make it to the next level, what do I need to do? Oh, I think your left foot passing out of the back needs improvement. Okay, how do I get creative to do that? Because I got to get better faster. I'm 23, I'm way behind, and I am like last in line because they don't even take a 23-year-old American serious in a place like England, who don't even think that Americans can play soccer. So I had to do all these types of things, and so I got creative. So did you see in the clip in the beginning when I say I pass around these posts because I feel like they're players? So I used to take chalk and write on all the 4 walls. There was like a courtyard that like everyone in the council flats used to dry their laundry. So it was just like this kind of 4-walled thing. So I would take my chalk and I would draw X's all over it, and all I would do was take my ball and I would hit the X's with my left foot because that's what I had to do to get better. I'd work on my striking, I'd work on other things, and there I am getting 5,000 touches, but yet normally I'd just be at a training session with my buddy and be like, hey bud, can you just pass around? But by being creative and being innovative in how fast I needed to get better, these things really allowed me to do that. And what I learned in making improvements was always trying to do it when the eye wasn't on me, when the spotlight wasn't on. So my general rule was, work in the dark and do what you're good at when everyone's looking. And that was always kind of one of my keys to each step of this way. But I started to get a little bit noticed. I started to get some good people to asking questions about where's this guy from, and I got to play against a first division team called Watford in a preseason friendly. So I was now playing in the 9th division. I was making 60 pounds a game. And I got to play against a first division team, and after that game, the coach came up to my coach and he said, I really like that kid. Is he, what's his story? And he says, oh, he's this crazy American kid. He's just been here for a year. He's just trying to grind it out. Again, trying to improve his game, good attitude, all that other kind of stuff. And he said, okay, great, I'd like to take him on trial. So I went to trial for Watford for 2 weeks. And basically, you train with their second team. So these are called the reserves. So I got to train with the reserves. I got a couple reserve games. And then the coach says, why don't you come to our last preseason friendly with the first team? So I'm like, okay. I'm kind of starting to learn that I'm okay at soccer and doing pretty well. And he says, we have one big preseason friendly against a Spanish giant team called Real Zaragoza. They play in the top Spanish league. It's our last preseason friendly. We're going to fill the stadium. We're going to get people. He said, why don't you come and we'll get you involved. So I'm thinking, okay, I haven't even played with these guys yet. I'll make it to sit on the bench. And I did bring that roll-up camera, the ones with the wind-up wheel that we should bring those back actually. I gave it to my buddy and literally said, take as many pictures as you can because I might not ever be here again. I thought maybe I'd get a spot on the bench or whatever. And I walked in, and on the whiteboard, I was starting with 10 guys I had never played with before, let alone trained with, let alone played with in front of 30,000 people. And I had never played in front of 30,000 people, not even close. So this was kind of like my oh shit moment, like, whew. I literally went to the bathroom stall, not to do that, but to have a little panic attack, but really just to say, this is what that year of effort has been about. This is why we prepare. This is why we evolve. This is why we ask questions to get better, because when we get an opportunity to excel to the next level, just like a product has to do after a prototype phase, you're ready for it. And I was ready for that. That's why I played in 2 leagues. That's why I was running when no one else was looking. That's when I was working and drawing X's on brick walls in the middle of council flats in England, so I could have this opportunity and perform well. And certainly that's what happened. We lost 2-1, but after the game, the coach called me into his office. I played the whole game, and he said, "Well, what did you think?" And I said, "I think you're an asshole." But he said, well, that was our big moment for you. He said, in this level, sometimes you got to be tested. And sometimes I got to throw you in the deep end. And sure enough, you swam today. So I'd like to offer you a 1-year contract. So I got my first contract, but it was a 1-year deal. So now I was here. Now I'm a product. I am in phase 1. I am out there now. Prototypes are finished. I've done what's necessary to make sure that I am something that is ready to go to market. So now I'm in the market. I'm 24 years old. I'm young. I'm hungry. I'm still very green. I still need to now, okay, now I'm in the market. Now I need to evolve. Now I need to ask more questions. I started working with pros. When you work at the professional level, which a lot of you people are, it's a different mindset, it's a different mentality, and it's a consistency that needs to stay true. And that's one of the things that I started to learn of who I was as a product and how I needed to really refine of, and how each little accessory is actually its own design element. So it's not just my left foot passing out of the back. That's just one thing. If I'm going to be a complete player, I got to do 6 things. And the guys in front of me are those 6 things, and that's why they get paid the big bucks. So I had to learn. My first product market was just being in the moment, getting my opportunities, and then I got a big opportunity when the guy in front of me got injured, and I got to play 30 games in my first season. And then the next season, we just avoided relegation. So remember in the leagues when you have to, one team goes up and one team goes down? We were in the first division, which is just almost to the Premier League. So that's technically the second block down. And we just avoided relegation in our first season. And after the second season, we got a new manager. And he was the most creative coach I've ever had. Not only did he know his players, but he understood that all of us were different. All of us needed to be molded in a different way. And so he got to know us on a personal level. He managed us. I'm sure you guys that are leaders in this room, it's all about managing the person. And each person is different. And he was the first person to ever do that. And he changed our mindset to go from a relegation team to a playoff contending caliber team to get promoted to the biggest league on the planet. So by the middle of that next season, I was starting to refine who I was, but he was empowering me to be who I wanted to be, and really kind of refine who I was as a player. And one of the things he used to do, and this was kind of cool, and he was again a really creative guy. He created this thing called the circle mentality. And every Sunday after we'd come in after a Saturday game, we'd do a cool down, and then we'd all sit in a big circle in our meeting room, 30 of us, and it had anyone that have to do with the game, from our physios to the subs to the coaches to our sports psychologists to anybody that was involved with a game day activity. He or she was in that circle. And what we would do is we would talk about the game. We would refine our skills. We would talk about, we'd have a go at each other. Or we would be nice to each other and be like, oh, I'm sorry, I should have got up on that, behind you in that goal. It was my bad. But what happens in a circle is that you can't hide. So it really opened the communication. It opened our levels to be able to speak and to evolve as a team. And by the end of that season, the relegation favorites were in this game. This is the playoff final to the Premier League. It's the most lucrative game in professional sports. Not the Super Bowl final, not anything. This game is now worth $140 million in one game because of the TV revenues that go from the first division to the Premier League, the most watched league on the planet. 400 million people watch the Premier League on a Saturday. And that's the guy on the left. He's the guy that really innovated us to be the team that could be ready for performances like this. I want to party with that guy. It's way more fun in slow motion. So Watford went on to win 3-0. I got to wear the crystal ball. I got the man of the match. And the kid from Wisconsin that no one thought could ever make it as a soccer player was now playing in the biggest soccer league on the planet. We got promoted to the biggest soccer league, and then there I was. You know, product phase 1 was done. But now what? You go to market, you understand, you refine, but now there's other things there was other fish to fry as far as I was concerned. I was I was ready to try to get to the next level. And for me, playing in the best league was one thing. But now, how do I start to ask questions to go and play in a World Cup? How do I become one of the best players in the world? And that was always, for me, the hardest step, of course. Once you talk about high performance and staying consistent, but now you talk about how do you become the best in the world. And that takes extra refinement. That takes an extra mentality. That takes this whole new vision of what you're trying to do. So part of it was a humility factor. So now all of a sudden I'm playing in the best league in the world, and no one in America had ever heard of me. I'd never tried out for my state team, let alone played for my national team. And there I was one of only 8 Americans playing in the best league on the planet. And I got a call from the U.S. national team coach. He's like, I don't know where you've been, but I'd like to call you in. I was 27 years old, and I got my first cap for the U.S. national team when I was 27. And but for me, the creative process, my mindset, never changed. You know, in those moments of comfort, it's easy to just be like, oh, I made it. I'm done. But you know, if you live by the creative process, it's always evolving. How can I get better? I'm here now. How did I get here? Okay, I know that. But now, how can I refine myself? How can I take the little details of my game, my personality, my leadership, my communication, all the things that make me the best product that I can be? How do I refine those now? And that's what I started to do. You know, again, now I was a new guy on the team again, so I felt like a rookie again. I was in a locker room with 25 of the best U.S. national players that I had seen on TV for many years, but now I'm sitting in the same room with them. But in a way, you gotta eat your humble pie a little bit. You gotta wait your turn, just like anytime you come to a new organization. You gotta sit on the bench and wait for your opportunity. You gotta listen. You gotta ask questions. You gotta refine why you're there and what you can bring to the table. And that's what I had to do, just like I had to do when I got to Watford. I had come through that, but now I'm on the U.S. national team, and I gotta do that again. So there was a lot of that stuff going on. And there I was, 3 years away from a World Cup. I was starting to play for the U.S. national team, and I'm thinking, okay, how do I make it and play in a World Cup? Because it's one thing to go, but for me, I wanted to start. I wanted to represent my country on that level. And I was 6 months away. It was October of 2009. 6 months away from a World Cup, and I was on a bus, and I started to itch, and I wore contacts at the time, and by the time I got to the away game, my eye was starting to swell up, and went to the game, and I was supposed to play, but I couldn't see with the floodlights, and my eye was starting to crank up, and I couldn't do it. So by the time we got on the bus and back to London, my eye had been swollen shut. By the time I got to the emergency room at about 7 in the morning, that next morning, I had lost. Basically what happened was I had a massive eye infection from a cut on my cornea that a piece of dirt had gotten under my contact. And I went to the eye doctor, and he said, okay, this is very serious, you have to eye drop your eye for the next 48 hours every hour. So there I am in excruciating pain, dropping my eye every hour for 48 hours, staying up for 2 straight days. But by the end of it, I had lost 70% of my eye tissue in 48 hours. So my whole right side of my eye, I was completely blind. 6 months before a World Cup, all the refinement, all of this detail to get to this level, and 6 months before the biggest, event, tournament, launch, you name it, of my life, I was blind. And I didn't know if I'd ever play again, let alone play again. And of course, there's that minor freak out again, and you start to wonder what's going on about, do I need to even retire, let alone, like, I've done all this work now to get to this pinnacle, and now this is being taken away from me. And in a way that I had to really go back into that whole positive mindset, but also just, okay, how can we try to make this happen? Because again, in a design frame, in a design mindset, we think about there's always a way. How do we get there? There is always a way. So first, you got to find the right doctor. So I went to all the surgeons in London. I found one that was willing to take it on. He said, when do you need to play? I said, the World Cup's in 6 months. He says, when do you need to play? I said, I need to start playing in 3 months. He says, okay. So we sat down. Just like any project in the creative realm, we have to sit down and talk about it, walk through it. So we had this whole process about how we were going to heal the eye. So that involved me sitting in the dark for 3 straight weeks, because if I looked at a TV or went outside, it would make my eye a bit angry. and then it would water, and then it would get upset, and that cuts the healing time. So he's like, okay, so now we got to sit in the dark. So I sat in the dark for 3 weeks, listening to music, visualizing, not how bad it sucked, but how good it could be if I can come through this in 3 months. And then every week I have to go and I had a stitch. I had a full transplant surgery, so I have somebody else's window in my eye. Do you guys know that the biggest corneal bank in the world is in North Carolina? So I got somebody in the States sent me one in London, but I have somebody else's window. So I had a full starburst stitch in my right eye. And every week I had to go get a stitch adjustment. So I'd go and I'd get a sight test. They'd pry my eye open, just like Clockwork Orange, and they would adjust the starburst stitch. You know, if it's starburst stitch, if it's just one stitch, if you pull from the top, it tightens in from the bottom, right? So it was very interesting, and I was all part of this whole process, and because I had to be into it. I didn't just like, hey, do something. I was like, okay, I got to figure out how to do this and be a part of it, right? So I learned a lot about, at that time, you know, eyes and just the medical in general. But yeah, then over the time, they slowly adjusted my sight. And I had 2 major surgeries to try to help it on the laser side, and then I played with that said stitch for 2 months. So I had a big protective contact that I wore over my eye, and so I ended up playing for 2 months with a stitch in my eye, and we had to play one preseason, one pre-friendly as the World Cup. We played Holland in Holland. Holland was the 3rd-ranked team in the world, and the coach called me. He's like, Jay, I know you've been going through this for a long time. You were my guy before, and you're still my guy now. I'm going to give you a shot. You can come to Holland. If you play well, I'll take you to the World Cup. Same idea starts to happen. I'm prepared. I'm doing fitness when no one's looking. I'm making sure I'm ready. And one of the things I had to do, and this was all part of my rehab process of being creative, was I sat down with the doctor, and I'm like, okay, how do we... Because I, as a center back, I need to head balls, I need to mark guys that are in front of me, crosses, et cetera, et cetera. So I needed to learn how to do it. So we started to play Wii. So we played tennis, we played golf, and I would also take a tennis ball and I would throw it and do all these creative games, just like the X's on the wall. When I started to learn my feet, I had to relearn how to use my eyes. So again, the creativity played a huge role in how I was able to get better faster. And certainly, I made it to the World Cup. We got to there it is. So the U.S. ended up winning 1-0. We won our group for the first time, and I got to be a big part of that. And this was my great lesson about that scenario. We won our group for the first time. Bill Clinton came into our locker room with a cooler of Budweisers. And there I was with one eye, slamming beers with Bill. But that takes a mental toughness, it takes a physical toughness. But for me, that whole rehab process was a lot about creativity, not just in our minds and what we think about in the dark, but about how we can use even the medical side of the game to be creative and to get through these types of things. And that put me into the last part of my career, and that was the real evolution phase of my life. As a leader, I was who I wanted to be. As a role, he was who I wanted to be. And that's why the Vancouver Whitecaps allowed me to be their first signing in their whole expansion franchise to the MLS. And I was really honored about that, not only for the first time I got to play a real role. You know, I was always a role player, but to be the leader is a whole different role. And I had started to learn how to do that my last couple years at Watford, wearing a captain's armband. But for here to be the first signing of a franchise and really have that role was both challenging, and I just thought, you know, again, as a product, again, going back to the whole point of this, I thought I was there. I thought I was like market ready. I'd been in the market for a long time, but at the end, I guess in my leadership abilities, I wasn't quite ready, because what happened was we signed a 17-year-old kid named Omar Shalgado. We had 17 guys that had never played together. And what I didn't understand as a leader is that I was always on teams that had a good leadership group. And for me, when I came here, I had never been a part of an expansion franchise before. Watford was around for 125 years. And for me as a leader, I was like, oh man. We didn't win one away game. Are any of you guys Whitecaps fans here? I'm sure a lot of you are. I'm sure you guys remember the first season as a good thing because we were a professional team in the MLS, but remember the bad stuff about that, and that is we didn't win one away game the whole season. As a leader and as a spokesperson and the face of the team, I had to burden a lot of that stuff. And I had to try to, and again, I came in on the point of like playing in a World Cup, so I thought my job was done. But it hit me like a ton of bricks, and this is what the evolution side of the creative process really taught me was, you're never set. You're never in a position where you don't have to evolve. So my first season was the most challenging season I ever had, because I had the biggest role, and I didn't do as good a job as I wanted to. So in my last phase of my career, I had to get creative. I started to figure out new ways I could talk to millennials. A lot of you guys, I'm sure, are doing this right now. I had to figure out new ways to be a leader. I had to figure out new ways that I had to, again, eat a bit of humility and say, okay, how do I become a better leader by making other people around me better? And that's certainly what happened. And in the second season, I had a young guy starting to really step up and perform. We had a couple guys that weren't leaders in the first season and really stepped into leadership roles because we had figured out through communication and a circle mentality that this is how we all get better, and communication was a huge part of that, and all those pieces started to really fit, and in only our second season we became the first Canadian team to make the playoffs in the MLS. And for me, on a leadership level, on a final refinement and an evolution of me as a professional product, that was by far the most gratifying. Mainly because it was just this whole, like, you always think you're ready until you have to evolve and get creative again, and that for me was a big thing. So, my real takeaway is on creating captains, right? And this is something that for me was always created, and it's a process, just like the design process. First, you got to try. You got to take your theory, you got to take your concept, you got to make mistakes, you got to evolve, you got to ask questions, and ultimately you got to survive. In that process, you got to learn fast. Nobody wants to see the guy or girl making mistakes of the same time all the time. And that means through experience and honesty. Every time you're making a mistake, oh, yeah, I guess I wasn't playing very well that day. Or I guess this part really does suck. And even though I designed that, it's still not working. So we got to change that. Take that away. Don't take it personally. Make improvements. Once that happens, then you start to gain trust. Gaining trust is the first step of really starting to be a leader and to be a real team member. From there, you start to earn respect. Once you have that respect, it was always about trying to lead by example and ultimately being consistent in who I was as a product or as something that I could bring to a team. But then the last lesson was certainly the thing I learned, and that was it's never too late. You can always keep evolving to be and to always try to be at the level that you need to be. And that, through the creative processes, and should be always evolving. And the last thing is leaders must be close enough to relate to others, but far enough ahead to motivate them. And I really truly believe that as the statement of, you got to be relatable as a leader. You have to be, you do that by understanding people, things, and listening. But then, by being creative and being innovative, that's when you start to be in a role where you can motivate people. You're a visionary, you're a creative person, you're someone that can evolve and think in the future. Then you're considered a leader and someone that can motivate others to come along with you. So that's always one thing that I've always lived by. And then lastly, that's it for my soccer story. But Mark wanted me to say where I'm at now. Okay, so now I've now evolved. I'm out of the game. And the final plug is just, I'm now back into the product design game. I own a stereo company here. I started 3 years ago with a buddy of mine. We're very still startup, but we have 4 products, and I'll show you what I've evolved to now as a designer. So this is the BC Rocket Log. We reclaim all of our products. These are reclaimed from BC logs, usually Douglas fir or cedar. We've developed the back cone into a full interface through Kickstarter again. We don't cut down trees. We only reclaim trees and repurpose them into BC singing logs. Product 2 is the namesake of our company. The portmanteau is an old word for a suitcase. And when we started Portmanteau Stereo, we repurpose old suitcases and turn them into boom boxes. As a portability section in the stereos, I just thought these are really cool, but I want to get into some other stuff. So now we're taking big trees and we're turning them into coffee tables. That's a 10-inch sub built right into the middle of the table. So that plugs in under your couch, and maybe you got another sponsor. But yeah, so that kind of, again, the evolution of product was, okay, first I'm running in the woods and saying, oh, these are cool. Secondly, I'm like, okay, these trees are huge. How can we make these into cooler and bigger furniture pieces? And then lastly, you can take the partier out of the partier, but you can never stop partying as far as I'm concerned. So we make beer pong tables. That have a system built right into it. You can bring them anywhere for your tailgate, your favorite team, your man cave, or for whatever it is you want to do. So this is the evolution of product design for me, not only as a player, but certainly now as a professional. And I always thank creativity for being a part of my life. I could not be more of a fan of creativity. I personally, in my education program with our youth, one of the major things, and I'm going to try to keep getting these guys involved in this, and any of you in the creative community that want to get involved in the youth development of kids, is the creative process and understanding what it takes to create. And that, what was the first line of the mantra? Everyone is creative. Because I truly believe that. It's just about unearthing what you're creative at. So again, thank you guys so much for the opportunity and for taking a walk down my lane for a second.
And last month, I just want to acknowledge that somebody felt very slighted because they didn't get their question until it was kind of too late and felt sort of invisible. Please understand that I'm doing the best I can to spread around the room. So if there's a cluster of hands, I'm not choosing you on purpose or like to slight anybody. I'm just doing my best, okay? Who was the first question? Good, we're done. Thank you for coming. Wow, suddenly we're back on schedule.
Jay, it's a beautiful story, totally inspiring, and absolutely genuine and authentic. I want to challenge you on it as a story that we can use as a route for our own inspiration. Your story, if I can really oversimplify, and I don't mean to do it in any insulting way, because I did think the story was beautiful, was that determination, personal agency matters, and you can make yourself the finished product. And this is a story we tell ourselves, particularly in North American culture. Actually, to some extent, it's very unique in North American culture, this cult of the self-made human. Mm-hmm. We sit around, I was saying, we sit around at dinner parties with our friends complaining about our parents, how we practically had to raise ourselves. And, if you had nice, decent parents who nurtured you and supported you, you practically don't have anything to say at these dinner parties. So your story plays beautifully as an archetype into this myth of the self-made person. But really, our agency and our determination and our effort, I find, plays into about 2% of our success. 98% of our success, well, I'll speak for myself, is dumb luck and the invisible architectures of the world that make it almost predetermined that I succeed. I mean, I could fuck up my life, but I would have to work pretty damn hard at it. To what extent do you really see that your story, which is incredible and beautiful, is applicable to the broad numbers of people that you tell it to?
Sure. Well, that's a bold statement as one, but it's also I think a lot of it is your own self-perspective of it all. Again, I think creating the best version of me was built through experience. I think having a university experience, understanding what it was like to work 9 different jobs before I actually got to become a pro, that kind of built-in mentality that I learned through experience of doing jobs I didn't want to do, being a part of many different teams through my work or my teams on a playing field, learning through people, learning through communication, all those types of things. And I think when I got to where I had to put all those things on the line, I compare myself to the 98 other people that would have been in my shoes. And I think because I had that experience, because I had that kind of life mentality built into me over years, I did have parents as gym teachers, so I got asked a lot of questions when I was a kid. So maybe I did have a lot of those things unearthed from me, maybe, from my support system. I think we are a product of our support systems. I do believe that, be it through family or friends or peer groups or whatever. But I think, yeah, at the end it was all about my experience that allowed me to, most importantly, and again, this whole point of today was using my creative experience and to keep the right perspective. I think you called the hidden architecture. I think that having a design background and being able to actually actively look for that hidden architecture and being knowledgeable about each part of that architecture, through just the creative process, taking a problem, noticing what's wrong with it, taking a scenario, knowing what's wrong with it, how do I evolve it, how do I improve it? Again, that was built into me through my education process. And I think, again, all of those things, from the humility that you learn from doing things that you don't want to do, or being in situations that you don't want to be, a support system that asks you the right questions that make you know who you are, experience to do 15 different things to understand this is really what I want, and I'm going to focus that true energy to this, because all this other stuff is noise, because I know myself enough to know that this is my passion and I'm going. And then the last thing, to have the creative process to help you through that and see that architecture, I think was part of my thing. So I guess that did put me maybe in that 2%. It put me in that very small amount of athletes that were good enough athletically to succeed, but maybe in that hidden architecture, I had built a lot of that stuff through my experience. And in a way, that's kind of what I'm trying to do in the education of young athletes now, is to try to help them build that architecture a little bit earlier, because I was just talking to someone right now about how we're not sure if that architecture is built to make us understand that we should go for it. But I get, because most of the kids that I know, they went through residency programs, they into their state teams or provincial teams, and then into the national team program. So they just stay in their lane the whole time. There's no experience, there's no hardship, there's no humility built things, there's no work ethic requirements. It's just like, you got to go play soccer and here's how you be good at it. But my experience in the creative world, in the work world, in the friend world, in the social environment, all those things that I wouldn't have had if I was in those academy programs, really helped me with my story and made me that maybe small percentile that used all that to actually make it.
Plus, there was some dumb luck.
Plus there's dumb luck, yeah, right? Of course. But I'm a big believer in that, I think luck only happens when you're really prepared for it.
Yeah. Hi, as your rise to making it in the Premier League, you obviously figured out the formula and you had the drive to make it. Can you give us any examples of people that you thought might have had several pieces of the puzzle put together but missed out because they were missing that drive or that skill or anything? Did you see any examples of that, and can you explain them to us?
Yeah, 100%. I'll give you two. One was the guy that I went to England with. His name was Kieran, by far a more technical, better soccer player than me. Understood the game better. He was from England. He was a great player, but he wasn't a team guy. Soccer games are 90 minutes. And the first thing that he would talk about when he was finished, oh, did you see my step over in the 87th minute? Some trick that he did, because that's all he thought about the whole game, is how am I going to do a trick to impress the crowd, right? But he forgot that the other 88 minutes were supposed to be tracking back on defense, making sure you're making the right passes, keeping the ball, not giving it away. All these other things that come along with being, oh, I'm picking that guy to be on my team. But he was all about the trick and his own self, and we live in a world like that now. It's just like, I'll do this trick, and now he'd have somebody videoing and see how many likes he can get, because that is truly the mindset of a guy like he was, and that was one version of that, is the person that they don't live beyond their own means. They just live in their own lane, and because it's about them. But if you play in a team sport, like I really believe business is just a team sport. It's an ability to do what you're really good at because you know that and you drive from that. But it's also an ability to relate, and it's also an ability to communicate your fears, your good things, your compliments, and your criticisms. And then the last thing is it's just about evolving the role, right? Because if we just stay in our lanes and just do one thing always, then I really don't think you're evolving enough to be relevant for a long time and stay consistent. So, that was one version, and then the second version is just. For me, I talked about him right in the talk. It was our first round draft pick, and what he didn't understand is the process. So again, my creative process was like, I know I'm not going to land on English shores and start playing for Manchester United, right? But in a way, if I didn't have a creative process mindset, I would have probably thought that I could just go knock on Manchester's door and be like, yo, I'm here to try out, but then think that I could make it. But knowing full well, like the reality of the situation was, is that there's no chance in hell that I would have made that. I knew I had to start in the 12th division, work my way up to the first, then from there you make your way up to there, and then you can make the World Cup team or make it pro. So Omar, when he was 17 years old when he got here, and he didn't play his first year because he's a rookie, but he'd been the best player on his team all the way till he was 17, big contract as a super draft, #1, coming to the Whitecaps, and he just thought he was going to walk into the team, not knowing that he's playing with a 30-year-old guy that just played in a World Cup, and surrounded by a leadership group that the club had brought in, and he was a young gun that would maybe play his first year. Second year, that's when you start to develop into the player that we want to be. Third year, about on a realm, that's what. But if you understand the process, he would have came in and been like, hey, I'm just here to listen, I'm here to grow. Year 2, I'm here to play. Year 3, I'm here to be good, right? But what he did, and we were 2 years in, and he hadn't played. He'd maybe played 3 games in 2 years. He had a foot injury his second season. He broke his foot. And I remember we were on a bus back from Seattle, and I sat with him on the bus on the way home. And we were sitting there talking, and he didn't play again, and his phone rang, and it was his dad. And he just looked at it, and he clicked to hang up, and he put it in his pocket. And I said, you're not going to answer your phone to your dad? And he goes, no, he's just going to tell me that I suck. And I said, what do you mean? He's like, well, yeah, he just always, he criticizes me and tell me that I'm not good enough. And I said, well, do you think you're good enough? And he's like, I don't know. I'm not sure. And the basis of that decision was based on the fact that when he got drafted as a 17-year-old at the U17 World Cup, Arsenal scouts, a big team in the Premier League, were there to look at him. So he thought that he was an Arsenal player already. He thought that he was good enough to play for Arsenal, but he never understood the process of what it was going to take to get there. And so I sat down with him and said, well, how do you, I said, yeah, I know kind of the basis of why you think this, but do you understand the process of what it would take to get to Arsenal? He's like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, what you don't understand is the process of how you get there. And if you don't play for the Whitecaps, you're never going to be a consistent contributor. If you're not a consistent contributor, scoring goals, being the best player on our team, then moving into the best player in the league at 18, 19, then you might get a look at Arsenal. Because knowing my experience in that game, playing against Arsenal and playing in those stadiums, you don't just take 17, you watch them, you watch that evolution, and then you watch that refinement, and then you buy them, right? But what he thought is that because they were there to watch him, he had made it already. He had dropped the process of getting better. He had dropped that creative process of what it takes to get there, and that hurt him so much because, and I think it hurts a lot of people, is they think they get this job or they think they made it. But they don't understand the process of what it takes to actually do it in the end, and all of the necessary parts along the way. And I guess me, with the backstory that I had that built into me, but I also, with the creative process, knew. And this is seriously the mindset, because I did live with this every day, was, okay, I'm new to this. So I'm just a prototype. I need to refine. I need to ask questions. I need to be, good, bad, ugly. But I think a lot of people, they don't understand what it takes to be that highly successful people. They just think that because they get the tag that it's there. And I think that was always the other side of that kind of development process.
Okay, last question. Brief-ish, briefer.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Jay. Shauna Sylvester, you talked about building captains. 3 of the most important lessons you've learned about how to build young captains.
First one is truly understanding who you are, what you bring to the group. I didn't really know that yet. You learn that by doing, playing, experiencing, knowing what you bring to the group, but also asking questions. So, do you think I bring this to the group? Because this is what I think. And then that person says 100%, that's what you bring to the group. Okay, now, yep, that's added to my jacket. Right, so I think first thing is getting to know yourself, knowing what you're good at, knowing what you need to work at. Number two, I would say communication. I didn't learn how to communicate until probably my 4th season. I don't know if you, can you see this? See the guy right in the middle with the big tall guy right in the middle? His name was Malky Mackay. He was my 2nd and 3rd seasons. He was the big, tall, 38-year-old Scottish dude. And there I was, 26-year-old, young, hungry, green American. Very different. But Malky was a big, slow guy. But what he did better than anyone on the field was command his group through communication. And he was just in easy street all day long because he learned how to use his voice when his legs didn't work. And he was the first person that taught me about how using your mouth and to communicate your ideas, to organize your group, really goes the extra mile. And actually, in the end, saves you a lot of work. And so he was the guy that really taught me how to communicate on the field, how to organize my group, both off and on the field. And then the third thing is positivity. I'm a big positivity guy. You know, yes, you are always going to have negative things that are surrounded by us, always. But it's in those moments of struggle, adversity, when, as a leader or as a person, to create a captain has to be able to take those things on the chest, not take that things personally, but be positive through it. How do you work through this? Okay, I get we're doing this, but what do we need to improve? Laugh a little bit, tell a joke, figure out a way that we can put these back things into perspective to say, all right, in this adversity, how do we be positive? How do we break through this? Because that's truly how you get through those types of things in the end. So I'd say those are my top 3.
Jay DeMerit.
Thanks, guys.